You guys see the title, you know why you're here. This next story is a true story. It should be used as an example of what are the possibilities when dating, visiting, or traveling around the world. Watch or listen to this while you're driving, cleaning, on the train, at the gym, or just getting things done. Grab yourself a drink or a snack. This is a story you don't want to miss. Stay until the end. This one is a banger. Here it goes.
I'm Noah, 35, American, from the United States. I met my ex-wife, Bayfern, 27 years old, who's from Thailand. She was super sweet at first, like they all are, right? But things went south real fast, but it totally worked out in my favor in the end. I was working remotely for a tech startup and decided to take a trip to Thailand to experience the culture and escape the monotony of working from home. I was always on social media, checking out travel vloggers, adventures, and living vicariously through them, and finally had come to the conclusion that enough is enough. So I bought myself a one-way ticket to Thailand. I went to Bangkok and Pattaya, and by the second week, I found myself walking at a local night market in Chiang Mai when I bumped into her, literally. I was checking out some street food when I turned around and accidentally bumped into this girl, spilling her Thai iced tea all down her front. I was mortified. She was pissed off, rightfully so. I apologized profusely and offered to buy her another one, and that's how I met Bayfern. What a fairy tale, right? We spent the rest of the evening talking and getting to know one another. She surprisingly spoke really good English, and we just clicked. We continued to hang out for the rest of my trip and kept in contact after I returned to the States. After a year of long distance, we decided to get married. I had been grinding at this tech startup for a few years now. I'm a pretty chill dude, always been the level-headed one, which is probably why I didn't totally lose it during this whole saga. So, Bayfern and I were married for 2 years, together for 5. No kids, thank God, looking back. Bayfern hadn't worked since we got married. She was doing marketing stuff before, but after the wedding, she was all about us. Giant air quotes. I was cool with it. I was bringing home the bacon, and I figured it was just a temporary thing. We had a decent place, some savings, nothing crazy, but we were comfortable. Bayfern was mostly chilling at home, but lately something was off. It's hard to put my finger on it, but she started acting distant. She'd be out way later with her friends or at the gym. She stopped being affectionate and got super defensive whenever I asked what was up. In the beginning, I thought it was just stress or a rough patch. But something felt wrong, and boy, was I right. One night, Bayfern was in the shower and her phone buzzed. Just reflex, I glanced at it. It was a text from someone named Bestie. Didn't think much of it at first, but something about the way it was worded felt weird. "Can't wait to see you tomorrow, babe," it read. If it was a girl texting her, she probably wouldn't have added the babe at the end of the text. I opened it up and boom, my worst fears confirmed. She'd been hooking up with a man. She thought saving the number as Bestie would throw me off. It was her gym trainer, and from the looks of it, it was going on for months. The texts were straight up explicit, full of plans that definitely didn't include me. I was just numb, not angry, not even really sad. I was actually surprised at my own reaction. I was just numb. Maybe it was shock, or maybe it's just how I'm wired, but I knew I had to confront her without going ballistic. When she got out of the shower, I calmly handed her the phone and asked for an explanation. She tried to play it off, saying it was nothing, just a joke. But when I read some of the text back to her, she knew the game was up. "I want a divorce," she said, cold as ice. No remorse, no apology, no nothing. Just a detached statement. She admitted she'd been seeing Alex, her trainer, for a while, and that she wasn't happy. She was leaving me for him. And then, without skipping a beat, she started talking about splitting everything. Half the house, half the savings, everything we'd built together. She even said she deserved it because she'd sacrificed her career for me. I was floored. But I stayed calm. Maybe I'd already mentally checked out, or maybe I knew something she didn't. So I agreed. I told her if she wanted a divorce, I wouldn't fight it. She could have half of what she thought I had. She looked surprised, probably expecting a fight or some dramatic meltdown. But I wasn't giving her that satisfaction. What Bayfern didn't know, and I didn't bother telling her, was that almost all our assets were in my mother's name. My mother's a smart woman. Years ago, when I started making decent money, she suggested putting everything in her name. She said it was a safety net in case anything went wrong. Debt, lawsuits, or, a cheating spouse. At the time, it just seemed like smart financial planning. So, when Bayfern demanded half of everything, I knew she was in for a rude awakening. On paper, I didn't own much. A modest bank account, a car, some random stuff. The house technically belonged to my mother, and the bulk of my savings was in accounts under her control. Instead of a messy court battle, I suggested mediation. Easier and cheaper, right? She agreed, thinking she'd walk away with a fat check. Little did she know, I'd almost forgotten about this whole arrangement with my mother until the divorce talk started. I hadn't planned for this exact scenario, but I can't deny I was grateful for my mother's foresight. I'd always kept a low financial profile, living modestly enough that nobody, including Bayfern, ever questioned it. As soon as the divorce process kicked off, I told my mother. She wasn't thrilled, obviously, but she understood. We talked to a lawyer to make sure everything was airtight. Turns out, it was. Bayfern could demand all she wanted, but there wasn't much in my name for her to take. Bayfern hired this super aggressive divorce attorney, one of those sharks who promises to bleed you dry. I hired a more low-key but reputable lawyer, someone who specialized in cases like mine. I didn't want a huge scene, but I wasn't about to get pushed around. The first step was asset disclosure, which, as you can guess, didn't go as Bayfern planned. I laid it all out, just like the law requires. When she saw how little was actually in my name, her lawyer's confident smirk vanished. They were both confused, maybe even suspicious, but there wasn't much they could do. Everything I provided was the truth. She started freaking out, calling me names, accusing me of lying, but I'd shown them everything. After a bunch of yelling, I dipped and said we'd talk when she calmed down. That's where I was at, turning to the internet, wondering if I'd handled this right. Am I the bad guy for agreeing to give her half of what's mine, knowing she's not getting anywhere near what she expects? Things escalated fast after that. Bayfern was in total denial. The look on her and her lawyer's faces when they saw the numbers was priceless. They immediately demanded a deeper investigation. Bayfern kept asking where all the money was, the house, the investments, the savings she thought we had. Her lawyer hired a forensic accountant, thinking I'd stashed cash in secret accounts. I was a little nervous at first, not because I had anything to hide, but because I knew this would drag things out. But after talking to my lawyer, I knew they wouldn't find anything. Everything was 100% accurate. As the investigation went on, Bayfern got more and more frustrated. She was used to getting her way, but this time, there was nothing for her to take. She couldn't wrap her head around it. She then tried to argue that she'd contributed to my career by staying home, like I was running a Fortune 500 company or something. I just happened to work in tech. It was her choice to stay home. Her lawyer kept bringing this up, trying to paint me as someone who'd benefited from her sacrifice. They even tried to involve my parents, trying to prove they'd been giving me money under the table. That made me furious. My parents had nothing to do with this. My lawyer shut that down quick. Bayfern then started a smear campaign, telling everyone we knew that I'd been hiding money, that I'd been financially abusive. I heard from friends about how she was going on about how I was leaving her with nothing. She even posted stuff on social media about narcissistic partners and betrayal. Some people took her side, but most of our close friends knew better. It was frustrating, but I tried to ignore it. I knew the truth. While she was doing that, I was covering my own ass. My lawyer and I were in constant contact, making sure we had all the evidence we needed. I documented everything. I also started gathering evidence of her affair. Texts, pictures, even statements from her friends who knew about it. I wasn't trying to humiliate her. I just wanted the truth out there. What made this even more interesting was Alex the trainer's reaction. When Bayfern first told him she was leaving me, he was all in. They had this whole fantasy of a new life together. But as soon as the divorce got messy, he bailed. Turns out he wasn't as invested as she thought. He started getting cold feet when he realized being with her might mean dealing with her financial drama. He even lost clients at the gym because of the scandal. Now he's distancing himself from her, and she's realizing this wasn't the fairy tale she imagined. I almost felt bad for her, but then I remembered everything she'd done. I was conflicted. On one hand, I felt vindicated. I was glad I'd protected my assets, but on the other hand, this was my marriage. I loved her once. Seeing it fall apart like this was tough. Then things took an even wilder turn. Bayfern was getting desperate and it was showing. She started threatening to ruin my career. She showed up at my office, yelling. I got her out of there before it got worse. She moved in with her friend and things weren't going well there either. The legal stuff got worse too. Her lawyer was trying everything to dig up dirt on me. They filed motions to subpoena my parents' financial records, even though my lawyer had repeatedly explained that my parents' assets were not up for grabs in this divorce. It was a clear attempt to rattle me, but it wasn't working. Byfern's team also filed a motion to depose my colleagues at work, hoping to find something, anything, that might suggest I was hiding assets or receiving under-the-table income. They were grasping at straws, but it was exhausting to deal with. Every time we thought we'd handled one of their requests, they came back with another. The whole situation was starting to feel like a never-ending chess match. Every move I made, Bayfern and her team tried to counter. But I'd been staying one step ahead, thanks to my lawyer and the airtight legal protections my mother had set up years ago. Still, it was draining, and I wasn't sure how much longer I could keep this up before we ended up in court for real. Speaking of legal proceedings, we'd already tried mediation twice, and both times it had been a complete disaster. The first session ended after about 20 minutes, when Bayfern refused to budge on her demand for half of the house and all her savings, which again were minimal. My lawyer laid out the reality of the situation, that the house was in my mother's name and that there wasn't nearly as much money as she thought. But Bayfern wouldn't hear it. She stormed out, accusing me of lying and saying that the mediator was biased against her. The second attempt wasn't much better. This time, Byfern showed up with a list of completely unrealistic demands. She wanted full ownership of the house, half of all our savings, even though they barely existed, and alimony for at least 5 years. When my lawyer calmly explained again that she wasn't entitled to any of that, Bayfern lost it. She started yelling about how she'd sacrificed everything for me, and how I was leaving her with nothing. I sat there, trying to stay calm, but inside I was fuming. She was the one who cheated. She was the one who wanted the divorce. And now she was acting like I was the one ruining her life. It was unbelievable. After that session, it became clear that this divorce was heading for court, whether I liked it or not. On top of that, Byfern had been borrowing money from her family and friends to cover her legal fees. She clearly hadn't expected the divorce to drag on this long, and now she was running out of funds. I wasn't exactly sure how she planned to keep paying her aggressive lawyer, but that wasn't my problem. The more desperate she got, the more erratic her behavior became. Mutual friends had told me she'd been spending most of her time at home, venting to anyone who would listen about how I'd ruined her life. It had gotten so bad that some of her friends had started distancing themselves from her. They were tired of the drama and her constant playing of the victim card. It seemed like everything Bayfern thought she was going to get out of this divorce was slipping through her fingers. Throughout all of this, I'd been doing my best to stay calm and handle things strategically. Every time Bayfern made a new accusation or demand, I countered it with evidence. Every financial document they requested, I provided, because I had nothing to hide. My lawyer had been great at making sure we were following the law to the letter, which was more than I could say for Bayfern's team. I'd also been working to protect my parents' privacy. Bayfern's attempts to drag them into this mess were infuriating, but fortunately, there were legal protections in place to keep her from accessing their financial records. Still, the fact that she was even trying showed just how desperate she was. It was like she thought if she dug deep enough, she'd find some hidden treasure that I'd been keeping from her. But there was nothing to find. Update 3. The day of the court hearing finally arrived, and to say the tension was high would be an understatement. Bayfern was the first to testify, and she came out swinging. She made it clear that she believed I had been hiding assets from her all along. She accused me of manipulating our finances, hiding money in secret accounts, and lying to her about how much we really had. She was emotional, painting herself as the victim who had been left with nothing after sacrificing her career to support mine. She was sobbing on the stand at one point, talking about how she had trusted me with everything, only to be blindsided by the divorce and my supposed financial trickery. But then came the real kicker, when my lawyer presented evidence of her affair with Alex, her gym trainer. As soon as the texts, pictures, and details of her relationship with him came out, the judge could see what was really going on. Byfern's victim narrative started to crumble right before my eyes. At one point, she even tried to downplay the affair, saying it was just a mistake and that it had nothing to do with the divorce. But by then, the damage was done. Her credibility was shot, and it was clear that her financial demands were driven more by greed than anything else. When it was my turn to testify, I made sure to stay calm and stick to the facts. My lawyer had prepped me well, and I knew that getting emotional or defensive wouldn't help my case. I went over everything. How my assets had been structured in my mother's name for years, how I had provided full financial disclosures, and how I had tried to handle the divorce amicably through mediation. I also testified about Bayfern's threats, her erratic behavior, and the smear campaign she had been running. My lawyer presented documentation of all the accusations she had thrown at me, both publicly and in court, and showed how baseless they were. We laid out the truth about our finances. The house belonged to my mother, her savings were modest at best, and there was no secret stash of money that she could lay claim to. The judge seemed to appreciate my straightforwardness. I didn't try to vilify Byfern, but I didn't sugarcoat the reality of what had happened. The facts were clear, and I made sure to present them without drama or exaggeration. A few key witnesses were called during the trial, and their testimonies helped seal the deal. First, my mother took the stand. She made it clear that these assets were hers, not mine, and that Bayfern had no legal right to them. Next up was one of my colleagues from work. Bayfern's team had tried to argue that I had been hiding money by receiving under-the-table payments or bonuses, but my colleague shut that down quickly. He testified about my modest income and my regular, transparent salary. There were no secret bonuses, no hidden sources of income, just a straightforward paycheck that I had disclosed. These witnesses were crucial in showing that Bayfern's accusations were baseless. The judge could see that there was no grand conspiracy on my part, just a simple, transparent financial arrangement that Bayfern had never bothered to understand. After days of testimony and legal arguments, the judge finally delivered the verdict. It was a huge relief to hear the words, "Divorce would be granted in my favor." Bayfern's demands for half of the house and our savings were denied outright. The judge ruled that, because the house and most of our assets were in my mother's name, Bayfern had no claim to them. The only thing she was awarded was a minimal amount of alimony, and even that was for a short duration, barely enough to cover her legal fees, let alone the lifestyle she was hoping to maintain. The judge made it clear that Bayfern's affair and her lack of contribution to the household finances played a role in his decision. He saw through her attempts to paint herself as a victim and ruled accordingly. As the decision was read out, I felt a massive weight lift off my shoulders. The months of stress, the constant accusations, the fear of losing everything, all of it melted away in that moment. I knew that legally I was in the clear. Bayfern, on the other hand, didn't take the verdict well. As soon as the judge finished, she burst into tears, shouting that the system was unfair and that I had cheated her out of what was rightfully hers. She stormed out of the courtroom, leaving her lawyer looking exasperated. I'm not sure what she expected, but it was clear that she hadn't prepared herself for the possibility of losing. For me, the immediate feeling was one of relief. I thanked my lawyer, who had done a great job throughout the whole process, and headed out of the courthouse. My phone was buzzing with texts from friends and family congratulating me on the outcome. It felt good to know that the truth had come out, and that I could finally move on with my life. A few weeks later, I heard through mutual friends that Bayfern had packed her bags and flown back to Thailand. She left America with her tail between her legs, having learned a hard lesson about honesty, commitment, and the importance of understanding financial arrangements. It wasn't the ending I wanted for my marriage, but it was the ending she created for herself. I'm incredibly grateful for my mother's advice and foresight when it came to protecting my finances. Without her help, who knows what kind of mess I'd be in right now. I'm also thankful for the support of my friends, family, and colleagues who stuck by me, even when Bayfern was spreading rumors and trying to destroy my reputation. I've learned some valuable lessons from all of this, and I won't be making the same mistakes again. For now, I'm just focusing on getting on with my life and enjoying the peace that comes with having this chapter finally closed. And I don't think I will ever get married to a Thai woman again, or any woman for that matter. I'll have my fun, but a ring, never again.
Make sure to check out my previous video right over here. And send over a story of your own that you'd like to be featured in the next video. Subscribe, share, like, and comment. My name is Roberto, and I'll catch you on the next one. Bye for now.